Hello, everyone. Week 2 is done in the LCK, which means it's time for another week of Monte and Wolf with dGon. dGon here, alongside limited edition McDonald's X LCK hat wearing Wolf. I love that hat.
I got a anonymous, I'll say anonymous kind of suggestion for what we should rename the show to. And it was like really funny, and I think maybe we should give it a try. It was the
Okay.
Monte and dGon show. So it's like, well, you get your turn now. Because you're not in the name right now. I'll take a little break. I'll be out of the name for like half the year, and then maybe next year we can have both of us in the name.
Yeah. This episode, we're going to be covering Hanwha Life T1, the DN Freaks, Dplus, and GenG. So if you're a BNK Fear X fan, sorry. We are not talking about that fraudulent 50% team who is currently ranked higher than my bros. That's
BNK, you're too bad to be discussed in a very serious contender type way, but not as horrible as the bottom teams. So we're not gonna also then like put you in the bin. So you're kind of in this nebulous zone where right now we're just not talking about you.
BNK, DRX had an opportunity to be talked about, but they dropped the ball. And KT, you got to win against who do they play against? Against BNK, and that's why we're not talking about any of them. If KT would have lost, we would have talked about them with the DN Freaks, but not the case here. All right, let's start off at not the tippy top, because Hanwha Life aren't undefeated like GenG, but they are 3-1. They did get a nice little bounce back start to the week with up against the DN Freaks, who stole a game from them. So we're thinking Hanwha Life maybe not in the best form up against T1. I think all of us predicted T1, or all of us predicted Hanwha Life except you. And then when it was time to watch the matches, we're like, oh, maybe we should have predicted T1. And then the matches happened. We're like, yeah, we knew Hanwha Life the whole time. Hanwha Life are the Enigma team of the LCK. True or false?
They I don't know how to explain it, but if you've been watching them or if you're a fan of this team, it's probably annoying as well. But like in first stand, just not trying very hard, messing around in draft, and then winning everything and making it look effortless, and then losing game 1 in the finals, and you're like, oh, it's bad Hanwha, and then like, we're just kidding. We'll play serious now, and then they just absolutely stomp. It felt like that was for me this whole lead up to the T1 series, losing a game to DNF, who have won like, I don't know, 4 games in total, maybe even less, throughout the entire season. And then beating T1 and making T1 look like they're not even in the conversation for top 2. So I predicted T1 because I expected T1 would be strong in this meta. Obviously, they brought GenG to the brink. There were some issues there, which we'll talk about a little bit more when we get to talking about T1 and Guma and Smash and stuff like that. But the form that T1 had versus Hanwha's like extremely rocky form made me, after that DNF day, I was walking around the arena, if you remember, dGon, be like, any T1 Predators versus Hanwha?
Yeah.
I was like, anyone bold as so bold as to think that Hanwha isn't as good as T1 after watching both of their performances? I was like gloating, and everyone's like, yeah, you might be right. This is not looking great. Hanwha did not look great. And then the Hanwha T1 series happens, and then Baker is 0-7. It's an extremely stompy series. Owner looked real rough in that second game. Like it looked like he did not have mastery of Jarvan, and
the Jarvan pick just felt awkward in that spot, anyways, right? Like,
he was like ulting Viper, who then just like netted away. And then like he like looked back, and the rest of his team was like, I'm not even thinking about going in on that, by the way. And it wasn't a great performance. I mean, it was a team issue though, obviously, in that game. And when you have the Ashe Callista lane, or Callista Ash lane, that we did see come back. First of all, it wasn't Guma Carrier playing it, so it didn't have the same. I don't know. It didn't feel like to me they had the same full synergy yet in terms of how Guma Carrier used to play that.
Yeah.
But also like there was a pause, which really freaked me out when that happened because I was watching the game at home. That was my day off, and I was watching the bottom 2v2, and there was like a trade, and then suddenly there's a pause, and then we like didn't come back, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's a headset issue." And I was like, "Okay, what's the real reason why we have a pause for this long? Because if it's a headset issue, this is not
What's
why."
a headset issue? What's a headset issue?
It was a headset issue, but it was also a chrono break issue because T1 was like, "Oh, the headset issue messed up our like 2v2 setup at level 1." And Hanwha was probably arguing like, "Yo, that's pretty weird. Like I don't think you get a chrono break for that because then you just get to 2v2 in the lane the way you want to." And there was probably a long lengthy discussion about that. So I went back and watched the game, and you could see the second they start trading, Smash like freaks out and calls for a pause, and like there's nothing weird about it. So like I went back and checked. I thought that was a very bizarre situation that made me very nervous that like there was going to be like when that pause got longer and longer and longer, I was like, "Oh, is this going to be one of those T1 pauses?" But it actually didn't matter. But then when they came back to lane, they didn't really push their advantage well enough because it's tough into a Caitlyn lane in general, and Renata is there, but Viper got massive in that game. Like he alongside Zeka was so huge on the Caitlyn that it just became unplayable. Like Jarvan tries to ult him, and then he just like kind of pushes himself back. He nets back, and then he's just like two shots Jarvan. It felt like it's like, okay, well, this isn't playable. Faker's 0-7. They had that fight on the top side. Like T1 did not respect Hanwha, I feel like, at all in this series, which, I mean, to be fair, like Hanwha looked rough in so many aspects leading up until this moment, but there was that fight in the top lane where Faker gets caught, and then in typical T1 fashion, they're like, "Oh, we know they're going to try to catch Faker, but we're all coming up, and they won't have the numbers that we have, and so we'll actually have this long extended brawl where we'll actually lose Faker, but actually get 3 kills," and that's like T1 does this all the time. But we're like, "No, we already knew that you were going to do that, and we have more people, and you were too split." And then like T1 kept doubling down on these types of fights until the game was just like unplayable. And I think Hanwha looked really clean. Like Hanwha looked like they read T1 extremely well. They were very familiar with T1's game. They were very stable in that bottom 2v2. Like the Callista Ash lane didn't throw them off. The pause didn't throw them off. Like they looked really good in game 2. Game 1 was a little bit more, it's Zeus playing Jace into a rumble, which wasn't the first time we saw this just completely break open a game.
I mean, it was also owner getting hyperfed on the Nefiri and kind of slowing down one-off plays here by Hanwha. Hanwha just had to realize, hey, they want reset city here. They want either isolated targets or low targets that owner can reset on. Don't give them that. And all of a sudden, T1 felt the pressure to try and make plays. It just felt like uh, what you said earlier. They read T1, whether that's Peanut, who's played against him so many times, as Zeus, who obviously was part of the team. He's like, I am going to die here. I'm going to be on my own here. Make a play somewhere else. And compared to a team that knew step one, which was like, okay, we're getting fed on Nefiri in this game. Now what? Like, we no one's really, we're not really doing anything. And then it was like, all right, we got to go make plays. We got to start diving into this Sejuani. We got to start trying to get past this rel, and they would lose the team fights. I felt like, as much as many critics would point to this being a Smash issue, I think this was more of, here's a complete team that knows what they're doing and knows what you want to do, compared to a team that is still trying to figure out what they want to do, with Doran still adjusting to the roster and then trying to figure out who gets the resources if Smash is in. But now owner's the one that's fed and has Nefiri. Like, who's the setup person? And it had to be, I guess, Carrier Faker. And then also picking the Pantheon support, which I feel like is so polarizing right now. It's like what Corky used to be in the mid lane, where it was losing a lot, but people picked it, and everyone at home's like, "Why do you pick Corky? He keeps losing." But in the game, they're like, "You get a ton of prio, and then you can do stuff with the prio that you get by being able to shove the lane in." And then teams just never did that.
Well, it's the Pantheon pick. I think it's quite strong, but it obviously depends on a lot of different scenarios in the game. I think Doran, I think he's a very good player, obviously. And I think he is the type of player that absorbs pressure incredibly well. The problem is, I actually didn't realize this was how it was going to go when lane swaps were killed. I thought like, okay, the bottom 2v2 is going to be so important. If you get pressure there, you can dive, you can lane swap the way you want, etc. But what actually I've learned, especially this week, is that in order to lane swap, your top lane needs to win, because you need to have tempo up there so that they can go bottom and actually get the advantage while you go top side. Like, if you have a huge advantage in the bottom 2v2, you can just lane swap even if your top laner is weak siding, and then just kind of like show up as the wave crashes and then he TPs bottom. As long as he didn't get forced to TP, you're okay. But if like they're diving you topside and putting the pressure on, even if your bottom 2v2 is winning, you can't lane swap top and get that tempo advantage easily. I think Doran, unfortunately, with like the rumble into Jace and then like getting kind of, it wasn't not a good time into the Jax, by the way, if you remember that game.
No.
He did not have a fun time. Like, if you end up getting your top side is falling apart, it becomes a little bit tougher to have those 2v2 kill lanes find success, which really doesn't have anything to do with Smash necessarily, although I don't feel like he generated the advantages that maybe Guma would have done in that type of lane, but that's due to Guma having an insane amount of experience playing those types of lanes with Keria, whereas I'm sure Smash experimented with Reckless a lot in the past, and he was even playing like Ashe Rumble lanes down there, and all sorts of wild stuff, so Smash has his own share of experience of that type of 2v2, but it just didn't look as clean, and obviously they're playing against a caliber player that is Viper and Delight, so that whole series to me just felt super bizarre in terms of how T1 team fought, and it wasn't necessarily about Smash. It was about like the choices of when to go in, and also Zeka popping off on the Yone when they like lined up for him, trying to force those skirmishes was just like, I'm like, man, this is so high risk. And if you lose this fight, like you threw the whole game, and then they like were like, maybe this one will be the one. I'm like, ooh, you're already kind of behind, and that one isn't the one. And it's like, okay, well, this is done, and it's a stomp, and it's not interesting. And I was really sad because this was to me the series that should have decided who's second place, and
It did.
if it was, well, if it was close, I would have been like, oh, okay, we know for sure. But because T1 just kind of fucked it up and didn't play their best game, I'm like, well, maybe it was just an off day for T1 the same way as an off day for Hanwha losing one game to DNF, the same way that Hanwha got smashed by GenG. I feel like I don't know for sure. Like, it looks like, damn, Hanwha is so much better, but they lost the game to DNF and looked really weak comparatively earlier in the week. So I walk out of this week feeling like, I guess on paper, Hanwha is the favorite, and next time they play against T1, I'll probably pred them based on what happened here. But I don't feel like I can confidently say, oh yeah, Hanwha's better than T1 for sure. Like they definitely were better than them on the day. Like, that much we know for sure. But it was just a weird game from T1 that doesn't make me feel like that's the same team that I saw against T1. And I made that tweet in response to Yamato because he also was like, the prep going to this seems bad. The drafting isn't great, which is how I felt watching the drafting. And I was like, yeah, it feels like a completely different team. And I was like, because it's not Gumayusi. But yeah, we were talking about the prep going to this series and the draft, by the way. We weren't talking about the players.
Yeah. In the post game press conference, so not the interview we did on screen, Koma took a ton of the blame, like a ton of the blame, not in terms of the environment that they're playing in, like Becker did earlier in the week, but more about the draft prep, the situations that the teams were put in within the game. He took a lot of it, and I think it was very, very obvious for us on the desk, and just these picks didn't really go well together. And because you look at the Yone. I know the Yone got the nerf with the, you snap back, you still stay stunned.
That seems like it
But-
has affected the LCK not at all so far.
No, it did. It did once yesterday when who played it yesterday? Fisher. When Fisher played it yesterday, Nongshim versus DRX, he did get stunned once over by the Herald pit. It was like the early Herald fight. He got stunned by Braum, and then he snapped back. He was still stunned, and then I think Victor came in and closed out the fight. Zukal. And the only reason why I remember that, because this is the only time it happened all week. Like, that champion is still busted. This is literally what I was trying to argue you guys with. I was like, I still don't think that's the issue.
I really thought it was gonna. I didn't think it was gonna make him completely useless, but I really thought he was gonna be pretty dead in the water for a while. Just because like that mechanic is so heavily utilized by players, the snapback to make plays. But it turns out that like he does so many other things very well that like you can still be relevant in team fights even with the nerf. And then he got buffed with his crit passive. So I guess maybe Yone is here to stay. But talking about like sticking with Hanwha a little bit, because we're gonna take a moment to talk about T1 more in depth in a minute. Like their series against DNF was some weird games, and you and I were talking about it right before we started the recording for the show, because we couldn't remember exactly how Hanwha lost to DN Freaks.
I couldn't remember.
Yeah, and it was just one of those games where Bulldog played Talia and had some good walls. Berserker and Dudu took over the game. Zeus got kind of camped and farmed on the Gnar, and a lot of people said that it was like a really bad series for Zeus. I thought he was fine. I thought his Gnar was just camped. Like there's been this trend recently where people are like, whenever a top laner gets hard farmed in a bad matchup and gets camped, everyone's like, man, he had a bad game. I'm like, well, I mean, there were 4 people in his lane constantly, and he either has to like leave his lane and be down 50 CS, or like try to outplay it and call for his jungler, and sometimes it doesn't work out. Like I feel like we've gotten to this point now where people are like, when the top laner ends up dying like 3 times, people are like, oh, he's shit, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, yeah, he should have just flashed perfectly and like dashed at the right exact moment and to dodge like 4 different types of CC that are coming him out at the same time, while the support just stands there and tanks the turret so he can't even do damage back, and then he dies, and they're like, yeah, rough game for this guy. I'm like, are we sure? Is this how we're calculating like how top laners' performances are when they get camped? We have to consider like some matchups that some of our top laners are given just means that they have to kind of take the brunt of that aggression. So that was AS for me in that loss.
But that's I feel like with this Hanwha team, because I disagree with your statement earlier where you said, I don't know if I can confidently say Hanwha is better than T1. I was like, I can. I think this was pretty big proof. Like,
okay, but do you think T1 will drop a game to DN Freaks?
It's not about T1 dropping the plan, because we've seen what the best this team can do with their other roster, which is what they did against GenG. Like, that was a great series, a great game. They still lost. Whereas,
but Hanwha lost real hard, didn't they? Hanwha did not play a great series against GenG. It wasn't even close at all.
Yes,
it was even less close than the Hanwha T1 series.
That is true. That is true. But I think with this Hanwha team, they are giving people the game plan on how to beat them, which is, if you want to win, camp the shit out of Zeus. But then they win in those games too. Oh, you want to camp Zeus? That's fine. Game 1 of T1 Hanwha. It's like, you can do that, but he's still going to get gold, put pressure on the map, and everyone else, you don't dare to try and win the 2v2 in bot. You probably don't dare to try and win the mid jungle 2v2. So you have to go play through Zeus, and they know that. And I think the fact that they know their identity, and again are forcing teams to become a specific identity against them, is really good. Like, that is a good thing to know and be able to force teams into, so you can develop different strategies to extract that gold.
I'm with you a little bit, but just to clarify, like, you mean that like you think that Hanwha is trying to bait teams into trying to only focus Zeus against them.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
okay.
Yes. Because they are used to doing that before with Doran, and they're like, shit, we really got to make plays somewhere else. Now they're like, he's fine. He'll die like 4 or 5 times, but still crash the wave, get the goal, do whatever, and be okay. And he'll still be able to carry later. We won't just expect him for like one, I don't know, Jack's stun in a team fight later on. He actually will deal damage.
I think again, I want to also make my position clear before like the light in the comments is like, oh, worst caster ever.
It's too late. You just,
to be honest, he's gonna
you
say
spoke
he
his
already
name.
wrote it before,
Yeah.
he already wrote it before I even.
He's
before
writing
he even
right now.
Yeah. How is he even there? The video isn't even popped.
He's everywhere. Oh my gosh, the light's on my face. That was probably a little weird. All right, go ahead. Go.
All right, so I'm gonna have two studio lights up here on my face. I just want to make it clear that I'm not saying that I think T1 is better than Hanwha. I just want everyone to know that I feel like it's still very ambiguous right now, and like Hanwha's loss against DNF was not like the only reason. I felt like even in their win against DNF, like in the overall series, I wasn't super convinced. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't look like Koshik had a decent game in game 1, and like Zeus had the counter matchup into the Gwen, so like that ended up being a little bit tough for Duda to play out. Obviously, Duda had a much bigger game in game 2. And then in game 3, it was one of those Zeka games where like DN Freaks skirmished early, Zeka got fed. That's it. That's the game. Like that could have happened to anybody. Like that happened to Nongshim. You know what I mean? Like Nongshim, oops, lost a team fight at 12 minutes, and it's the LCK, and your comp doesn't scale. So, lose for 20 more minutes, and we'll see you in game 3. Like it felt like one of those games where, like Zeka getting 15 kills against DN Freaks because DN Freaks fucked up some engages and played Taric doesn't mean they're good. So like that was my thought process like going into the T1 series. So I think Hanwha is incredibly good. I mean, I think on their best days they look, almost unbeatable. And I don't think they had their best day against GenG. And I think if they are playing at their peak, they would have played a close series against GenG. It's just like my final real like thoughts on Hanwha right now are if you are only going to show up half the time, what happens when you don't show up against GenG in a best of 5 that determines your, where you're going to playoffs or whether you're going to MSI or not. Like, because there's just been so many games where Hanwha is not on, and I don't know why that is, but you could very clearly look at, 2 Hanwha games. If I took like an average League fan, I was like, is this the good Hanwha game or is this the bad Hanwha game? I think 99.9% of League fans would be able to identify like, ooh, that's the bad Hanwha game where they didn't play well, or wow, that's the Hanwha Life Esports that just won first stand, won LCK Cup, and won LCK Summer. Obviously with a slightly different roster, but you know what I mean. The core is the same, and that was the Hanwha that had it turned it up to 11. So I worry that this team won't be able to find the consistency, but it's super early in the year, so I'm just going to keep them under a magnifying glass. Because I think that they absolutely could be not only better than T1, but the best team. There's not enough evidence for me yet. I need to see more.
And we will have more. 7 more weeks of LCK to prove to you another T1 Hanwha match. Another Hanwha GenG match later on in the season. But I feel like we put a lot of the banger matches at the front of the season. I feel like
we really did
3 weeks, and not all of them delivered either, right? Like Dplus GenG, which we will get to later on. Actually, that one was okay, but it still followed the script. Like T1 Hanwha, that like Hanwha GenG. These were just like we just wasted a good game.
Only T1 GenG ended up being good, to be honest. For like in some ways for the wrong reasons, like But yeah, that one was that one ended up being good, even though I think a lot of people didn't expect T1 to even do anything based on how they were talking about the series. But yeah, because the season is so front loaded, we won't see Hanwha play against the top teams again until the second round robin. So you guys are gonna have to wait like 2 to 3 weeks, I think, before we start getting into those again. So
Yeah,
it'll be all right though, because then we'll see if Hanwha lose like random games to the bottom teams again, and then I have to go dGon, like what's going on over here. I'm still looking for my consistent Hanwha that like when GenG and T1 were at their peak form and their top form, they generally didn't drop games to randos, except like Bro sometimes for GenG. I don't know what was going on with that, but like you know what I mean? Like when you're the elite team that's gonna win MSI, you're usually not like getting outclassed by DNF. So we have to wait and see what they're gonna look like in the future.
I hope everyone's ready for the bangers for the bros in week 3 against KT, and of course, following up from their upset victory in the LCK Cup against GenG. Those are the matches to look forward to for week 3 because we front loaded week 1 and 2. All right, before we dive deeper into the psyche of the substitution of T1 and some of their matches and get some of your comments who also weighed in on that. Got to remind you about our friends over at Turtle Beach. You remember the first time booting up your favorite game, the late night sessions, the epic wins, and the sound of the lobby filling up with friends, Wolf? Gaming was just something, wasn't just something that you did. It was your life, a whole experience, one might say. And the right headset made all the difference. Well, Turtle Beach is bringing back that feeling with the Gen 3 Stealth 700 headset. It's like stepping into the golden age of gaming all over again. Only this time, the audio is richer, the surround sound is more surroundy, and the batteries last an insane 80 hours. No more crackly mics, no more missed callouts, just pure, uninterrupted gaming. Exactly the way you remember it, but better. And so for a limited time, get 10% off your entire order using the code Monte Wolf at turtlebeach.com. Don't miss out. Stay warm and leveled up with your 10% off at turtlebeach.com using the code Monte Wolf. That's Monte Wolf at turtlebeach.com.
Great read. Damn. I was thinking about the whole time though what my first gaming experiences were like with a headset back in the day with my Walmart headset that doesn't even have a brand, and it's kind of going like over the ears, like the old headphones from the 2000s.
Yeah, they would hurt your ears. Oh,
Yeah, it hurts your ears. And then like I'm a ventrilo and somebody keeps pressing them and then he's like trying to say something. I'm like, and then I press it and it's like, and I'm like, and to open it up again, and I'm like, sorry, what did you say? And he's like, and I'm like, and then like there's a pause, and then he's like, Mom, yeah, I'll be down later. And he's like, sorry, actually, I know it took us 20 minutes to set up this session, but guys, I gotta go. And then like he leaves, and then leaves Ventrilo, and like it was, being a gamer as a kid was hard back then because not everybody was a gamer, so you kind of had to like find your friends through the internet. Like it was so rare to be able to play. It was hard to be able to play games with people in your high school or your middle school because like you have to find like that one gamer, but he's like in a different home room, so like you can only talk to him at night, on BattleNet or whatever, or on Ventrilo, or on like I don't know, AOL Instant Messenger, and you're like, yo, log into StarCraft and we'll make a thing. And then you're you're like, otherwise, like being like my best friends I game with are in Poland. For me in Canada, I had a few Canadian gamer friends. I had a few that lived in Russia. But yeah, all I can tell you is we didn't use voice that much, even when the programs were there for it, because the tech was trash. I didn't have a Turtle Beach headset back then.
You're bringing up like old gaming setup and making friends on the internet. My first gaming friends were a bunch of Filipino Americans that I met playing Counter-Strike that lived across the country. I lived in Virginia, they lived in California. And then we ended up meeting when I went to go visit family out in California. And it was like, it was so weird not using Counter-Strike as our medium, even though we'd been playing games with each other for like 2-3 years. And so you think of like setup. Do you remember when you had to put in the port code? Like, do you remember port codes at the end of the IP? You put the IP in the
Yep.
port code. I
Yep.
think Counter-Strike's was 27015. I think is what Counter-Strike was. 270
I had a
10
notepad file
through
for that.
1115. Yeah.
I had a notepad
Counter-Strike's port code?
file. I
Oh
don't
my
know
god.
because I'm telling you, I had a notepad file for that stuff, so I never memorized it because I'm so bad at remembering that kind of stuff. And I also
Yeah.
played a ton of different games, so what like you might have been playing Counter Strike only during that time, and so like it was super easy for you. I didn't have
Yeah.
obviously one for StarCraft, so I just
Yeah.
didn't have to worry about that. That was the game I was playing all the time.
All right, chat. If this is the time where we need you to weigh in the comments if you remember this part. Because again, Wolf, I don't know if you know this, but there are a lot of people that are fans, hardcore fans, FANS of their team, maybe T1, that just don't know like the history of the game. They don't know. They're new. They're brand new. They like started following during COVID or whatever, and then they found their faker tiger, whatever his logo is. I forgot what his logo was. Faker penguin. So please comment below if you do remember the days of setting up your own server, renting a server, or Ventrilo before Discord, y'all. Speaking of comments.
Yeah, we can move on.
God.
We can move on.
Yeah, we're you're gonna pull me back in, Wolf. I almost got us out. All right. Speaking of comments, we got yelled at that we didn't do a comment roasting start last week. So we're gonna do a couple comments now because a lot of them had to do with T1 since GenG T1 ended last week. So the way that T1 and GenG ended with a Chovy versus Faker 1v1 was the best way for that series to end, something out of a movie. I agree. We did make a Mad movie out of it, which played like all LCK week of that great ending there, Wolf. What did you think of the ending of GenG 2-1?
I mean, at the time it was chaotic. I remember I was super unhappy with my cast. I felt like I didn't like I thought Chovy. I didn't realize Chovy had TP. I wasn't sure. I thought he had TP'd back because he was trying to get back as soon as possible instead of just recalling. But he recalled back, and I was like, wait, maybe Faker can stop this if he has enough time. Like I didn't say all those things, but when I was reading that situation, it was everything is chaotic. I also thought like there was no way Guma's just gonna die over the wall, and so I was like. I made a loud noise. It was very hype. Like I really enjoyed the game, obviously, and again, I felt like Atlas's cast was very hype and very good. I wasn't. It wasn't the worst cast I've ever done, but like I feel like I don't know. I wasn't happy with it. But anyways, the moment was super hype, and the series was super hype, and like the way
your
the way
call
that
on the moment was super hype.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I felt like it's a series that I'll probably remember for the whole year. Like maybe in 2 years I won't remember it as much because we'll have some other bangers that like kind of replace it in my mind. I mean, I don't think I'll ever fully forget it, but you know what I mean. Like right now, I've got it all in my mind, all the details, all the moments, and Chovy just popping off, and then when we saw the comms, that was the best part that was the additional thing we kind of gained from this week because we had the open mic on it, and I don't know who says it, but somebody's like, Chovy, you have to 1v1 to win. It was just like, you have to win the 1v1 to end the game because like Faker's still alive. And Chovy just like doesn't answer, picks up his drink and like sips it, and then just walks down the lane. And like he almost like had this look of like, yeah, I'm pretty sure with like a ton of super minions and my super fed Victor that has no deaths, I think I'll be okay. Like I don't think there will be your 1v1 truly. I don't think that I'll have to win anything.
Thanks for
he
the
just
advice,
looked like
little bro.
he knew. I think Chovy knew. It was one of those rare Chovy smirk moments, when he killed Guma, he knew it was over. He was like, and like obviously he killed basically everyone else as well, but like he had this look on his face like, I did it. It was me, and it's over, and we won because of me, and I'm going to end the game now. It was like him walking down the red carpet. It's like when you hit a home run and like you run the bases, but it's a formality. That's like what happened when he walked down the mid lane.
Everyone else saw Faker live, but he knew. Here's another one. Fearless are the kryptonite spelled with the C. Kryptonite still The Fearless Kryptonite. There we go. Sorry. The Kryptonite with the C messed up my reading. I couldn't even read it.
It's very cryptic, the Kryptonite.
Go
on.
Oh, that's what it is. They misspelled Fearless. I was like, why is my brain telling me something's still wrong? The Fearless Kryptonite. Oh my gosh. Still the biggest hurdle for T1. GenG showed their laning prowess again. Chovy's choving again. I'm pumped for what LCK teams will cook for MSI after this split. Can't wait for Hanwha versus T1. Duro still remains to be my support NPC on GenG. Guma/Ruler will always attract views. Well, got a surprise for you. Hanwha Life in T1 was not that good.
No.
I don't think Fearless is the main issue. I think it was just like, I guess it's Fearless drafting. I mean, again, like Koma said in this last series, that Hanwha Life T1 series, drafting was the issue. But I don't know if drafting was the issue in the GenG T1 series. I felt like it was execution based. Game 2 was, they lost the 2v2 early, and then game 3 was a great game. It was a great game, but the Caitlyn wasn't able to fully like shut down Ruler, I'd say. What do you think?
I don't think Fearless was the issue. I think that, I don't know, when I think about Fearless, I see a lot of comments and stuff that like don't make any sense regarding Fearless. Like, we would have never seen this pick if it wasn't for Fearless and stuff like that. Like the Cho'Gath pick. I'm like,
we saw that comment the most during First Stand when Hanwha Life picked the Vladimir, and everyone was like, "See, Fearless in game 1."
I'm like, it's in game 1, guys. Like, what are you even talking? Anyway, Fearless has created the situation to me where you just have less options in draft. Now that the LCK teams are more used to it, and then like we end up with these kind of weird games where one side of the map is just completely it's just completely unplayable basically, and then the other team exploits that, and then you have to, like, it's usually topside where this happens, and then you try to go to grubs but you're behind, then you fight for grubs on the second grubs, and then you lose that fight, and then the game is over and we watch it for 20 more minutes, and like, I'm kind of over it, but I hope that teams can start getting more creative, because right now teams aren't using Fearless the way that I think everybody hoped that it would go. I think maybe they are in other regions a little bit more. I think that from some of the games I've watched, they definitely are. But the LCK is just kind of going, all right, we're going one step down the tier list because the other ones are gone now, and we're just gonna play. Oh, it's MF, Kalista, Ashe, Ezreal. Who am I missing? Is that it? Like in most 2-game series, I think that's it. Like,
Yeah.
So like, I think that a lot more creative picks could come through, and probably will start to come through. But anyway, I went on a rant about Fearless when that wasn't even the question. Let's move on to the next comment, dGon.
All right, last comment. Last comment, then we'll steer it back to T1 because you'll see how. deokdam's stats among LCK ADCs after week 1. His KDA was 9th. His average kills was 9th. His CS per minute was 9th. His gold per minute was 10th. His damage per minute was 9th. His average deaths was 1st. I bring that up because they played T1 and got, bopped in one of the most boring telecom wars we've had in a long time. In a very long time. And remember, that includes the telecom war that was the homestand that everyone thought last year, that everyone thought T1 was just going to win in Goyang Arena, and then KT make a surprise victory against them. Here, we're like, maybe that'll happen. Nah, not even close.
Yeah, it wasn't at all. I think T1, showed that their fundamental skills are just higher. Like, it's actually just that simple for me. I don't feel like T1 played like an amazing game by any means or anything like that. It wasn't like T1 had some sick strategy. It was just pretty basic outclassing. Looking back at the drafts now, it's, Doran has the Rumble counter pick, like Galio. Keria played Gragas support, which was fun, but I feel like not even wholly necessary in this draft.
Yeah.
And then there's the other game where it's just like, owner plays Nocturne, and it's not even Nocturne Oriana, and it's Paddock, who's just not that experienced. Oh, Paddock's a pretty known quantity. Like, he's played a ton of LCK games, actually, compared to other, like, Challengers players. Like, he's not technically a rookie.
Yeah.
But, like, he hasn't been in for a while, and he's playing Ashe in this composition. Peter has been pretty up and down, I feel, as a player so far this season. So, it's not like he could be everywhere. He could defend everything. And Smash he played Misfortune, and he did press R towards them, and it was a very basic series. And I think KT, I'm super happy that they decided to just, like, they eventually were like, okay, Wei's not it. Like, Wei was the weakest performing support, I think, in most people's eyes. And they were like, okay, gone. No more. And then they pulled in Casting in game 2, which I was super annoyed about. I was like, man, if you're gonna do this, you better keep him in, because you're messing with Perfect's confidence. I went on that whole rant, during the LCK. I think I probably did it here as well. But now they actually were like, he's the mainstay top laner now. So I actually think that's a good decision. If you're gonna make a decision like this and you do move all these moving things at once, but like they kind of transition slowly with some of it. Like, Peter comes in first, then Casting comes in for a game, and now Paddock is in, and now the whole team is different, but the same core, the only part that was doing well is still there. So hopefully for KT's sake, they can figure out how to, move forward and find consistency with this roster. I think realistically, probably not going to be a top team, and probably not going to be in the Legend group, I think, at this point.
I just appreciate that their journey is what DRX is starting now. Okay. Our great LPL worthy 80 carry is struggling. Must be the support's fault. Let's swap him out. Okay. Top lane struggling. All right, let's swap him out. Oh no, is it our great legendary long career 80 carry that needs to get swapped out? You are at step 1, DRX. You have swapped out the support. Then you're gonna look at top lane and be like, ah, shit, Rich maybe ain't it. And then you go down to the human nexus and, like, you got Lazy Feel. Come on, Coach Song, put in Lazy Feel. Teddy picking Kaisa to be the human nexus in your game-winning match. You could have done it. That's a champion pool issue. Lazy Field, he's a young gun. He'll play whatever he wants. Oh, okay.
I can't believe they picked Kaisa there. You actually reminded me that they did that. Oh my god.
Yes, that was, and you could see Coach Song was like, "What do you think?" And then the assistant coach was like, "What do you think?" He goes, "This is a Kaisa angle." It's like, no, it's not.
You know what? It's funny because I actually kind of in my mind thought you were there because you brought this up, but you weren't there for the desk when I was there, and I like jokingly said, I bet they just fucking picked Teddy Kaisa here for absolutely no reason. And like both Brendan and Chronicler were like, nah, there's no way. And then they hovered, and I was like, oh, wait, hold on, guys.
Yeah, he hovered it, and then we're like, no, and then he locked it in for dramatic effect. It was like, yesterday, that final day of LCK was, the story had already been written. Right, it's Dplus and GenG. We're gonna go 3 games. It was gonna be the stomp into the heartbreak into a loss. We thought it was gonna be stomp the other way, but it was heartbreak. And then DRX, it was a classic do good. All right, and then Teddy just can't do anything for you, and then he's gonna blame his teammates. And I mean, he's not gonna blame his teammates, but people will blame his teammates instead of just him not being able to play anything else.
Like for T1's overarching, like, they crushed KT roster, wasn't that interesting. Like, the main reason I bring all that up is because I don't feel like Smash played poorly there. Like, it was fine, but I also don't feel like you can walk away and be like, well, very clearly Smash was the right option because they crushed KT, and it was super obvious that he was better. Like, you can't actually draw any conclusions from that series. And then I think while you can have one small conclusion in the T1 Hanwha Life series about how the 2v2 went, like, for me, I feel like Guma Keria, because they have more experience with the Kalista Ashe type lane, the double marksman, I do think they would have probably generated more advantages there. But that series to me was not about the 2v2. Overall, it was about when T1 chose to fight and the setups they gave or didn't give Doran, to be frank. Like, Doran didn't do himself any favors in the Jax game, where, well, he was playing Abessa into Jace's, into Zeus's Jace. Jace. It's all melding together. Anyway, he played Rumble, so like, you know, these are like the situations that like led to a lot of problems for T1 in that series, and we already talked about it a little bit earlier, but just talking about Smash versus Guma because it's your weekly dose of, like, we have to discuss this briefly on this show.
Well, they made the sub. They made the substitution. That's why we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
We're not drama baiting this time. FM Korea DC Insider, Twitter Nation.
There was some real interesting conspiracy theories this week we could talk about, but I'm not getting into that because it's not that's too crazy. But there was some funny ones. They weren't that prevalent, so if they were super prevalent and got into the West, I'd be talking about it. But anyway, I think that like, if Guma was playing, it wouldn't really look different in that series. I personally think that even if they won the lane a little bit more, like the 2v2 lane, and only, by the way, one of the 2 games where they had that, then they probably still would have messed up the fights on the top side of the map and the skirmishes and the commitments that we saw.
Yes, but the big Zeka ult, the fight that had the big Zeka ult, where everyone was going up there, that was Smash overstaying for a tower and getting caught first. That to me was, when we think of the big mistakes that Guma made in the series against GenG, with like the miscalculating the 2v2 early on the Corki, the final team fight getting caught by the laser by Chovy, the lack of traps on top of the tempered fates, right?
Traps.
You can weigh the decision or the way the scale of those mistakes however you want, but those mistakes were ones that Guma made. That to me was the big mistake Smash made that no one else, you know, that wasn't like a product of anything else. He miscalculated where they would be, or the team didn't communicate it. He gets caught, and that started that whole trickle effect of, we got to go save it. Because normally, like we've talked about before so many times on the show, it's Faker pushing a side lane, and then everyone else can TP on in or get something else done on the map. This time it was Smash, and rarely, if ever, do we see that being Guma. Like, the Guma doesn't die like that. Guma dies in team fights, he dies in 2v2s, but he doesn't die split pushing on a lane on a wave that maybe he's not supposed to.
Yeah,
and
Guma,
I think
he's so consistent, and like he's not a type of player who usually gets punished, which is like one of his strengths, but also his weaknesses, right? Because he doesn't necessarily take risks or try to push the advantage super hard to then give his team bigger leads, because he wants to play safe. So like, that's a trade-off you're going to get, right? That's the whole thing we've been discussing for like so long about this. But I agree with you in that, like, that was a mistake that Smash made, but it was about how the team followed up on it that really put them into a massive hole, right? Like, you know, Smash getting caught is a problem, but then committing to the fight and then losing everyone is like digging a deeper hole. And I do think there are some things you can find to criticize about Smash, but for me, this series isn't prolific enough to be like, for one side of the Smash versus Guma to be like, checkmate, see, this is it. Like, I proved you wrong on either side, you know, and I think we're going to need to see a lot more games. And I think for Guma fans who want him to play no matter what, like, it's going to be sad to see that long period before maybe Guma gets another shot be the way it is. But like, I think that's going to be the way it is because Smash is still super young and still doesn't have a ton of LCK experience. So I think it's just going to be a little while longer before a decision is ultimately made. And I think if you're on the internet saying this was a horrible game by Smash, bring Guma back in, I think you really need to just reassess the game a little bit more and look at some of the decisions that were made overall. And T1 was dealing with, like, I feel like T1's prep going into the series, I completely agree with Yamato's take, which is why I responded to his tweet, like, looked rough. Like, it didn't look like they were very prepared for this, which is a little bit sad because it's the biggest match for them for the week and what could have determined where they're going to place at the, like, they could have placed second at the end of the first round robin had they won this, but now it seems unlikely because they're dealing with all the drama constantly and the the Discord leak and all that other stuff that's going on during the week that like might have affected how they prep for this. I don't know. But remember, Smash was under an insane amount of pressure, like an insane amount of pressure.
Yeah. The only reason why I brought that up was because it feels like we're only counting scores on one side. Like I needed to count scores on both sides. It's like, okay, maybe overall we don't make a decision on Smash here because the draft was bad. Even before we get in the game, draft prep was bad. And then the execution in the gameplay was bad. There were no way to capitalize on a Fed owner. Like Faker didn't have a great series. Like Carrier was probably like the only one that was like, again, at form with a terrible form team. So we can't make a conclusive decision on Smash. However, we can say, hey, Smash, that was bad. That was a mistake. That was your fault. A teaching moment. Whereas with the GenG Guma one, you can go back to those things and say, these are teaching moments too. So I agree with you. More matches, probably better for this T1 roster. And we will continue to follow the T1 telenovela K-drama into week number 3. Oh, geez. I want it to be concluded. Like, how do you fix this? I was thinking about this the other day. I think you just kumbaya it. You put your heads together and say, all right, the 6 of us, the 8 of us, say whatever the fuck you want to say. And no one will get, like, no judgment, but we need to get this all out so that all of us know what all of us are thinking. And then we block everyone else. Don't go on Twitter. Don't go on Reddit. Don't go on, you know what? We're going to use AI to respond on your T1 membership, whatever. They're going to get mad once they figure out it's AI. Doesn't matter. We need to win. Because you know what solves all these issues, Wolf? Fucking winning. Winning solves everything. Winning solves everything. In competition, winning solves everything. The Denver Nuggets, who just won the NBA championship literally last year, just fired their head coach and general manager because winning solved everything until they started losing. And then, oh, look, there are these cracks that have formed. It was like, no, those cracks have been there forever, according to sources within the Denver Nuggets organization. As soon as you start losing, the cracks start to show. And then you get to realize how long those cracks were there.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think there's certainly been a lot of behind the scenes stuff. We've heard a lot about a ton of different rosters in the LCK having big internal problems, but they keep winning, and so it doesn't matter, and nobody knows, and nobody finds out, and later the team changes and the problems are solved, and nobody knows what happened except the people,
over there.
Insiders. Yeah, but like. I do think that there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. Like, if you could just keep winning, then no one will care. I think the difference in this scenario is that, like, if they keep winning without Guma, the people who want to watch Guma, because they don't care about T1, they care about Guma, who's their favorite player playing, will still be upset. And I can't think of another time in my esports career. Maybe someone will even correct me and be like, no, Wolf, remember that StarCraft 2 team back in the day? But, like, I can't think of another time where a roster selection has been this controversial. Like, EasyHoon and Faker back in the day.
I was going to say EasyHoon and Faker, maybe.
Well, that was like, totally different, though. As it felt like it was so obvious that EasyHoon was going to be a sub, and maybe I'm remembering it differently because it was so long ago, but it became very clear that Faker was still the main guy, but EasyHoon was going to...
Yeah, no, you're right. Right?
And then, like, we had OGN Masters and stuff back then where you had different rosters, and there was, like, a lot of different reasons why you'd want to have EasyHoon around at the time. But this feels like people are scared that they'll never see Guma again. And in truth, like, if he never becomes the starter for the whole year, he won't play until next year. Because his contract ends in November. And I don't think T1, and by the way, this is not T1 because they're evil. This is T1 because they're a smart, business-oriented team.
Yep.
There's no reason for them to loan him to anyone for anything less than an exorbitant amount of money. Because it's Gumayusi. Yep. He's got insane brand value. He's insanely talented. He's one of the best AD carry players in the LCK. So if you loan to somebody, they better be paying you a lot. And like, why would you give one of your brand pieces to another team? Why would
because
you
it's the right thing to do, Wolf. It's the right thing to do. You're supposed to do the right thing. Corporations are always known to do right things, even at a loss.
I've seen so many people. I even saw this like post going around that Bro was in talks with Guma. Yeah, get a reality check if you think that's happening, by the way.
No, that was we did read that to us. It was like the sources from my friends, dogs, sisters, like owner who works at the agency. Like it was a meme. But I mean, bro talent, sure, I accept with full arms. However, right now, that's not the case, and I agree with you. Like it is,
and like
it would be bad of the organization to let him go unless they're paying him a ton of money.
I had like a real talk with some of the people in my Discord who do understand this and know this as well, but like people like, I can't accept it if he just rots on the bench for a whole year. I'm like, well, that's sports.
Yeah,
that's it. Like if you get benched, you got to earn your spot back, or the person who benches you has to fuck up basically, and you have to prove to the coaching staff somehow through scrims and stuff that you're doing that you actually need that spot back. And like, I don't know what it's going to take for Guma. Maybe Guma's like, you know what? Like because Guma is a solo queue grinder. You know, like every time you see him on solo queue, that's when the rumors start popping up. Oh, I think Smash is coming back in. Let's be honest, but like maybe if he goes to CL and he's like, I will play down in the dirty. I'll do whatever you guys need to prove myself. Like maybe that's a way he gets some clout back in. I don't know, guys, because it's not up to me. It's up to Coma and the coaching staff as to who's going to be starting. And to some extent, the upper management of T1. But, like, we may live in a world where you have, like, Guma dying to Chovy was the last time you see him play in T1 colors. And you're going to have to accept that. That might actually be the reality we're living in. And that's how sports works. That's how cutthroat sports can be. So it's a competition. And, you know, you'd be super hyped to find out what team he's playing for next year. If that's the case, and we'll all be waiting. But that might be what happens.
There are so many times in American football where the quarterback position, the most important position in football, they sign a guy for $1 bajillion, 4 years, and then literally after like half a season, they're like, "Oh shit, this might not be the guy," or "This isn't the guy that we bought," or what happened? What changed? Where did it go wrong? But we know that right now, for week 9 out of the season, this isn't who gives us the best chance to win. And the backup that no one knows comes on in and does better. Like from an eye test, does better. When you compare careers, not even close, but does better at that time. And then that guy gets hurt, and then you're the former guy that you benched has to go back in, and majority of the time he doesn't look better. So we'll see. We'll see how this one shakes on out as the world turns.
It's hitting me so hard like that. I didn't really think about what I just said about like that Guma dying in that GenG game might be the last time you see him like wearing a T1 jersey, but like that might be like the thing, you know, like when people have those videos where it's like, oh, I have this video of Faker's first kill, or like, you know, Faker's first triple kill. Like those videos are all on YouTube. It might be like Guma's last game, or Guma's last like death on T1, like jersey, like moment. Like that might be how people remember that game. They won't think of it that way right now, but maybe like in a year, who will be like, that was Guma's last T1 game. Holy shit, that was like the most watched game of all time.
I need to throw out that I don't think that that is what it is. I want to believe the coaching staff and what T1 has said, where like they're gonna play the best AD carry that week, because you have two guys. Like that's one of the biggest differences between this and any other substitution. You have two guys of comparable skill with different skill sets. That's why. Like a lot of the time when we've ever had substitution stuff, even with Easy Hoon and Faker, those were two different skill sets that were very good, but Faker was the better player. Like there was no question about that at the time, but he was still getting time. Whereas Smash and Guma are both amazing AD carries in different ways. So you need to pick the way that you want to try and win that week. So therefore, I think Guma will get another opportunity, given that, you know, his attitude's good, Smash's attitude's good. The team's attitude around it is still okay. They realize, hey, something's not working the way that we're normally doing, so things have to change. But and unfortunately for them, they don't have a jungler of comparable skill. They don't have another top laner of comparable skill. Poby is not comparable skill to Faker, so therefore,
Don't you say that about my goat.
You're Ghost, you're greatest of some time. So I think that's why I think we'll see Guma, but that is a good point. It could be.
I always bring people back to 2021.
Yeah.
Danny is coaching T1. We have every single position is moving around except Faker. And like you have Zeus coming in, you have Owner versus Cuz versus Elim. There's 3 junglers. And by the way, they're all top tier junglers at the time. Like Elim was considered to be very strong at the time. And you then have also Teddy and Gumayusi. And then Keria and Effort. Okay. I believe it was Keria and Effort, or maybe it was Hoyt. It was Keria and somebody else. But anyway, Keria really wasn't being subbed out. Faker wasn't being subbed out. It was really Teddy, Guma, the 3 junglers, and then the top lane as well with Kana and Zeus. And like there was such a huge roster and so many swaps around, but it was mostly Guma and Teddy that swapped early. And I felt like you did back then, like, oh, look, this draft is good for Teddy. This draft is good for Guma. Very different skill sets, very different types of drafts we're seeing. Who's going to play Xayah? Who's going to play Jinx? Who's going to play Aphelios? Like, Gumo's going to play Aphelios. But ultimately, like, eventually, Danny got fired, and they were like, no, this isn't the way to do it. And then Teddy never was seen again. And nor were Cuz and Elim. And, like, I do think what you're saying is potentially true, but if it was as true as you say, and like two AD carry players have such unique playstyles, and they're gonna only draft like these champions for this guy and this playstyle for this guy, when you see like when you look around, you're like, oh, it's Guma over there, then you could just ban out what T1 is doing with him, and it becomes a weakness for T1. So I don't know if that will ever long term be a thing, but for now, I could see it while they're trying to figure out what these 2 players do for this team. But I think
I see what you're saying, Wolf. Go ahead.
I just think what's more likely is like they will continue to play Smash until they're dissatisfied with his performance, and then Guma will get another chance. And if they're never dissatisfied with his performance, then I don't think Guma will ever get another chance. That's what I think is going to happen, because that's usually what happens in esports in general.
No. Y'all, Wolf is fronting. What he actually means is that since he told that story and it only changed when Danny got fired, is that Wolf thinks Koma's getting fired, the coaching staff's getting fired, and then we're locking back on in with a solid roster. So we'll see. All right. That is enough. That's enough. We've T1'd the crap out of the podcast. You can write in the comments below your thoughts if the evolution changed between week 1 and week 2. I feel like it's so wild. All right. Before we get into the rest of the LCK, it's time to remind you about our friends over at Factor. Make this season the best yet with nutritious 2-minute meals from Factor. Eating this well has never been this easy. Just heat up and enjoy, giving you more time to do what you want to do. Get outside instead of prepping and cooking indoors. Factor meals arrive fresh and ready to eat, perfect for any active lifestyle. With 45 weekly menu options, you can pick gourmet meals that fit your goals. Choose from Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, and more. Factor powers your day with satisfying breakfasts, on-the-go lunches, and premium dinners, and guilt-free snacks and desserts. So get started at factormeals.com/Monte Wolf 50 off and use your code Monte Wolf 50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code Monte Wolf 50 off at factormeals.com/Monte Wolf 50 off for 50% off plus free shipping. Thanks to our friends over at Factor. Okay, Wolf, we are T1'd out, but not done yet. Time to go from a team that lost, but is 2-2, to a team that is losing and all that they know. And those are our friends at the DN Automotive Freaks. You know, DN Automotive is the world's largest car part manufacturer. Like, they make the most car parts. So this is the team that bought Guangdong Freaks, which was a pharmaceutical nutrition company.
Okay, they're not okay. I think, just to clarify, I don't think they bought Guangdong Freaks. I think they just Guangdong Freaks were owned by Soup, formerly Afrika, right? And like their naming sponsor was Guangdong. I think their naming sponsor contract expired, and they found a new one in DN Freaks. I don't think DN Freaks or their DN Automotive is the owner of
because
team.
they're still the
They're
Freaks.
The naming sponsor.
I see.
Yeah. Well,
they spent the money to become the naming sponsor, you know, thinking they're going to be around for a while. Maybe like a lot of those crypto companies bought into the LCS, like TSM FTX and Dignitas Quantum Pay. And you're thinking, we'll be around for a while. We'll buy something that we're like, you know, excited about. They have yet to win a series. They had the opportunity to do so in the match of the week, which I say every broadcast, and you can figure out the spelling of week, against my bros who also did not have a victory. And they have one of the better AD carries in the league. You have a top 5 AD carry in the league. Five, bro. Top 5. It is Berserker and the boys on that very sad blue team.
Hold
and
on,
they can't beat their way out of bros. He's clearly 5th, if not better. Clearly 5th.
He's 5th or 6th. Like, and it's crazy to say. Wait, hold on. Let me see.
What do you mean 5th or 6th?
Ruler, yes. Aiming, Viper, Smash Guma. So that's already 5.
Not the way both of them have been playing. But yes, I picked whoever T1 is starting in front of him.
Okay. And then Teddy and Diablo. Okay, I'll probably give you like he's better than Teddy and Diablo. So like I'll let you have it. I'll let you have this one, dGon. I'll let you have this. Okay.
I gotta look up this this comment. Someone on Twitter came up with this. At one point, T1 had Teddy, Guma, Berserker, and Smash all at the same time. This was November 18 to July 2021. So in July 2021, they had Teddy, Guma, Berserker, and Smash. And he's better than, I would say, two of those. I mean, according to Performance Now,
they have
you could say that he's the 4th best AD carry.
Yeah, they have a lot of talent scouts. They find people and kind of develop them. That's like what a lot of our top teams do. GenG does this. Hanwha does this really well. Berserker, to me, was never the problem on this team, obviously. Like, and to me, like, when I was watching him in Kespa, or an LCK Cup, rather, I was like, this guy could, if they play around him and they actually continue to make good macro decisions, because they were playing, I felt like they were playing better in LCK Cup than they're playing now in the LCK. Maybe they're like a little bit burnt out on like things aren't working. I don't know what it is, but I was like, man, Berserker is good enough to drag this team across the finish line if they can just play okay, you know? And then, like, we had some good games from Bulldog in LCK Cup. I haven't seen them since, you know? Like, what is going on with this team? Like, I don't like to tear teams down, except BNK most of the time, because, like, it felt like for the longest time that team was solo effort. But, like, DN Freaks are becoming this team for me where I'm like, you have Pyoshik, dude. Like, Pyoshik isn't getting anything done. And, like, Pyoshik needs, I think, a team that's a little bit more stable to actually be the player that he is, because he's often a high-risk player. But if everyone trusts in him and everyone's, like, you know, they have at least, like, 1 or 2 winning lanes, so maybe he can actually play through that and they can get some stuff done. But, like, he's not able to do anything. And it feels like Pyoshik is not... He's, like, not having great games, but it's also... that Pyoshik has always kind of been, like, a flippy, inconsistent player. But
are we getting a Pyoshik apologist angle? Whoa!
I mean, I'm just saying, like, I feel like Pyoshik isn't, like, it's not just him. Like, you can't be like, well, this team can't win because this Pyoshik guy is rough. When Dudu is losing, like, every lane, and Bulldog is losing winning lanes that he's supposed to be winning, and, like, messing up team fights, and then Life is, like, he is the ball and chain attached to Berserker. Like, he's, like, He's trying in some of these games to set Berserker up, but like often misjudges the situation, or then just if Berserker's doing fine and they're doing fine in the 2v2, then Life like just goes crazy trying to get a pick in mid lane or trying to go get deep vision in a place where he shouldn't be able to get deep vision, and he dies and he just gives free gold over. And like Life was one of my favorite supports back in the 2021 era. Like I thought he was super good. He was so fun with Set. He played a lot of Jarvan. He's just a really creative player. We haven't seen. I mean, he's played a little bit of creative picks so far this season, but he just really isn't indexing into that. And I think he's just. I don't want to say washed, but I kind of want to say washed. Like he's just not. He's not in good form right now, and the whole team has issues. And even Berserker doesn't have. He's not. He's like. I feel like pretty good 7 out of 10 of the games, but 3 out of the 10 games, like I don't know. He's not having a great game himself, and this team just can't find any level of consistency. They can't find any level of strong drafting, and I feel like the talent that's on this roster could push this team into like at least the territory of where DRX is at right now. You know what I mean? I feel like they at least have the talent to be like up in that conversation, but instead they're just getting bopped by everybody and then randomly taking a game off Sleepy Hanwha, but that's it. Like I'm worried for this squad.
I don't like using that term that you use there, Wolf. Washed. I really don't like using
I don't like it
because I believe that the skill or the environment or the combination just hasn't unlocked the form that someone once had. Like I find form chasing as like a topic, as a concept, like very fascinating. I was talking to Ox about it because I think I might have told everyone this past week, Ox was one of the best weeks I've seen Ox at work. Like as a person, as a friend, like you're my friend too, but like at work, Ox's form was crazy funny, crazy good. And it's about catching that form. And when you look at Pyosik, since the DRX run, and maybe like that play at Worlds where he killed Faker on Lee Sin. Other than that, it's now like a mountain of mounting evidence. And it sucks because this is someone that I care about, that I done a lot of interviews with, that I got to know over time. And then you compare that form with Berserker, whose form is clearly better. He can't play. And you go down the list of this roster. These are players that have had long careers. When we're looking at that like assist record and we're looking at all the records that people are breaking, these guys are on those lists. Pyosik is on the list of most assists. Life is up there at the supports that we're also breaking records too in terms of assist games played. Wins, his win record because of how long his career has been. And now you're just like, oh, you guys are kind of like bro effort now. You're at that point of your career. And it feels like all together. Yeah. Like it, I think that's what it is, Wolf. Because you got a guy like Berserker is a known like quantity because of how long he and all the success he had over at Cloud9. He's still super young-ish. Like he's young-ish comparatively, right? And Life is not. How old is Berserker? Don't look it up. How old is Berserker?
I want to say like 25.
He's 21. Berserker is 21.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Like when I look at his face, and I look at like how long it feels like we've been talking about this guy. Like you mentioned him back several years ago as a T1 trainee. I'm like, he's got to be 25, right? He's 21.
No,
because like
he's 21.
Actually, because when you're at the age of like what we were talking about with that when they had all the talent, that's like when you're 17 as a player, when you're like at the bottom of that list and you're actually just about to be eligible to play. It's crazy, like how young he is, and how much there still is time to grow. But also at 21 in esports years, it's like, did you make it by now? Because if the answer is no, like you're actually old. You know what I mean? Like 21 for a normal human and also in traditional sports, etc., is like, oh man, you've got your whole like everything's ahead of you. At 21 in LoL esports especially, like because you like Counter-Strike, it's a different story, whatever. Overwatch has been somebody's different story. When you're 21 in LoL esports, it's kind of like, what have you done by now? Like, have people been incredibly impressed with you? Have you actually does everyone know your name? Like, if so, like you can make a lot of money and your career set. And I feel like Berserker kind of, because he was so hyped up as a trainee and then went over to North America and became a household name there. Like, I think he kind of has done it by 21. Like, I think he has secured himself a future. I think that, especially with his performances we've seen from him so far individually compared to the rest of his team, he might be able to slide into an upgrade if the team doesn't, upgrade its roster next year. I assume his contract ends at the end of this year. Then maybe next year he he actually goes into a more top upper echelon team because he deserves that, right?
Yeah.
I think he's super good. I do think that he's held back by his teammates a lot, but even he has made some mistakes that look silly. Sometimes because he's just trying to carry, like he's trying to make the outplay, he's trying to make the super play. But he's also made some mistakes that I feel like are, like you shouldn't be making if you consider yourself a top LCK 80 carry. But I think he's got so much going on in his head because his team is just failing repeatedly, and usually not through his faults. So sometimes you lose focus, you make a mistake.
Using my argument though, Bulldog's 19. I had no idea Bulldog was that young. He has played, so I think a better way to look at it is like career matches played. Berserker's played 254 across T1, T1 Challenger, Cloud9, and DNF. So this doesn't include the top end. Whereas Bulldog has played 278. Afrika Challengers, Guangdong Challengers. I mean, he's spent his career here with the team. And then you look over at Pyoshik, 540. Dudu, 348. And Life, 641. Like, you want those veteran presence to be the stabilizing factors. And what it feels like they are unstabilizing the game. They create instability within the game that forces, the pressing and then the mistakes that happen. And that's how I see the situation, because it just feels like a whack-a-mole on which one of these vets is going to make the mistake first, that then just ends up being like a vacuum of space that like the team can't just play through.
I feel like this team has, it's the one team where, let's say somebody told you could turn the dial back to like any year of each player's form for 4 of the 5 players. Let's just say we won't be turning Berserker's dial. You know what I mean? I'll be turning Life back to 2021. I'll be putting Dudu back to 2023 probably. Pyoshik back to 2022.
Yeah.
Bulldog maybe just like back
of
to
last year?
maybe back to LCK Cup, like from this year. Maybe just like a little bit back.
Yeah.
But like, my point is like, it's not, Berserker's not the issue. His form right now is he's not. If we are using the W word to describe some of these players, we're not using it to describe him. Okay, like he is not past his prime. That's the ultimate point I think that dGon is trying to make here, and I think I completely agree.
Yeah. The saddest part of all this, before we move on to our final topic of the day, the saddest part of all this was what I got to see. And again, I love getting to tell these types of stories where I don't feel bad. After the series against Bro, we did the interview on the desk with Hype. It was our first time doing a live translation with Wadid doing it on the spot. And Jason wasn't there, like Boss wasn't there, so like we're all kind of doing it on the fly, we're all making it up, and so we do the interview. It ends up being way better than what we thought. We're all just kind of like super like hyped, the adrenaline is still pumping. And then when we go back during like the break of the switch from series 1 to series 2, I'm not sure if you saw it, brother, but I saw DNF walk back from the fan meet, and everyone's kind of sad, but they're all together. And then the last person to come in their space between him and everyone else was Berserker, who had a fan sign in his hand, and he was like barely holding on to. He was doing the walk where you're walking, but your arms aren't moving. And it was just heartbreaking. It was just crushing, because he laid it out all on the line, and the reality is, holy shit, we just lost to Bro. We are now, in terms of, objective rankings, the worst team in the league. And it validates the feeling that we felt, which was maybe we're the worst team in the league, but we're playing the other worst team in the league. So it just sucked to see, it sucked to feel. And I Remember, I liked the Kwangdong Freaks when I first joined last split, and you guys were like, well, maybe you should rethink that. And then I picked Bros. I don't know. But it just stinks to see a team have to go through that and not just all be bad. If they were all bad, okay, sure, whatever.
It's rough, but I think there's still a lot of LCK left to play. And maybe they could figure it out. Most teams, though, frankly, do not figure it out, and they spiral down, and you have a solely one prince situation. But you know what? I'm hoping they can figure it out, because I saw what they did in LCK Cup, and I was like, this team has potential. This team looked good macro wise. Bulldog got some good games, like his rune choices. He was playing some good League of Legends. I know it's in them. So they got to get out of the dark spiral. Please get out of the dark spiral. Final thoughts.
It's bad when Wolf's good thing to say is he picked runes good.
He got some good rune choices, man. I like to. He played Corky versus Set and had like a first strike game and generated a bunch of gold and then kind of inted later. But I was like, man, he used his first strike well, and he was playing a little creative. Anyway, I've never been the biggest Bulldog cheerleader, to be honest. But in LCK Cup, I was like, oh, maybe it's time.
Yes,
it wasn't time. It wasn't time.
To go from one tragedy to the next is maybe not tragedy as in like, oh my gosh, that's so tragic, but tragedy more in the artistic form here, Wolf and Andrew, our producer, and all you friends at home. It's more about the tragedy of Dplus GenG. Every time you watch Romeo and Juliet, the ending doesn't change.
No.
You know what's going to happen, but you're there to watch the decision making of how it happens, how these actors portray a story that has been long foretold since their time. And this is the same with Dplus GenG, where I had no idea it was this many games. They're on a 17 match losing streak coming into this week, and they do it again. Like in the classic Dplus GenG way of stomp game one, give you hope, and lose a heartbreaking, mostly controlled game two that they had in their hands until they threw. And then a little twist in this rendition by Showmaker and the boys. They were fucking in game three. It was close until GenG closed it on off for the 18th time. Oh, it's just oh man, it's brutal. It's brutal.
I think for me, this series was one that I felt like Dplus showed some of their strong potential in, and played very well towards their strong draft that they had in game one, but also otherwise just cooked and had worse fundamentals than GenG. And I didn't enjoy the series that much because I felt like we all knew that Dplus could have a cool draft and outsmart GenG at least one time, and they did in game one, and they had the better draft, and they just absolutely bodied Keen and got a huge tempo advantage and rolled with it and won the game. Because Keen was playing Sion, and that's how it goes.
Yeah.
And then the next two games, we took some scrappy fights. We didn't have the right vision set up. I'm saying we as if I'm part of Dplus, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of everybody looking, watching, going, hey, we are hoping for it's not 18 times in a row. Maybe Dplus will be good. Maybe Dplus will be, we will be, up at the top. But I already told you guys many times, I already gave up on Dplus. I knew even when they stomped game one, we all fucking knew when they stomped game one, it was going to be a reverse sweep, and there was not even for 1 second that I believed that Dplus would win the series, because I just think fundamentally they don't have the fundamentals that GenG have. They had Showmakers playing the Cho'Gath in a comp that kind of doesn't really make sense at all, in my opinion. But he didn't get the lane advantages against Chovy that I think a lot of other Cho'Gath players would have had. He had some opportunities there he missed, and they botch it. They just botch it, man. They botched the fights. They screwed it up. They don't have the fundamentals that GenG has. And I think that, unfortunately, Showmaker Happy Gaming with like and cooking has limits. Like, there's a reason why GenG doesn't cook like that. You know what I mean? And I think, as much as we wanted to give Dplus credit for being like the team that's so creative and the team that's going to use Fearless incredibly well, I think we have enough data to know now that like that can get you a win in a best of 3, like 1 win, but it's not enough to get you 2. But it might backfire also, and it has backfired for Dplus so many times already in LCK. Like, they lost to B&K by cooking as well. And I do think that like there's a limit. I want to see Dplus work on some fundamentals and then cook, because I think we're missing some of the fundamentals. And then we can like cook and have a lead and then end the game and win the series 2-0, and it's not 18 losses in a row. That's where I'm at.
Good old classic winning fixes everything, right? Dplus were winning, so they were skipping steps, and in this case they were getting punished by GenG in the closeout games.
They got
like the steps they were Yes. Yes. But is that, and then Vex at the very end in game 3, like another unique champion for Showmaker to play, and maybe there's another option somewhere, and I don't know. It's just, isn't Vex just one of those champs where it's like, either when you hit the ult, they die. 1, you got to hit the ult. 2, if you hit the ult and you're ahead enough, they will die. And if not, you'll hit the ult, you'll fly in, and then you will die. It feels very Udyr-esque of like stat check. It's a stat check.
Yeah.
Am I ahead enough? Okay, cool.
If you look at their whole draft, like into what Dplus have, Dplus's draft is so good into them because they have, such a brawly, low range, basically melee composition, and everything that isn't Varus that Dplus is trying to do by going in with Nico, Nefiri, Vex is countered by Renata Glask, which GenG drafted early in the draft with their Kalista. So, like, I think Dplus cooked a little hard, and I think, like, Vex is great into Sylas in the individual matchup. K'Sante can neutralize Camille really well, so that's not an issue. But, like, GenG, they cooked a little bit, but, like, they actually really thought about what they were putting together here a lot, and it ended up being so strong like Dplus's comp is great in isolation, but not great into GenG's, whereas GenG's comp is, like, not necessarily great in isolation, but incredibly strong into what Dplus put together.
Yeah. Did we learn anything? I guess we talked a lot about the single from the Dplus side. For GenG, I think it's cool to see them, what they do when they get punched in the mouth. We got to see them stomp Hanwha. We got to see a just absolute brawl against T1. But in this case, in game 1, they got stomped. And like, it's cool to see them be able to bounce back and not just fold over. You assume that would happen. And it wasn't in just yet another way where like Chovy farms mid lane and then takes over the game. I guess he kind of did that with the Chovy CS Corki, right? He was Corki in the mid lane that he played against the Cho'Gath.
Yeah.
But it was actual like, hey, let's find ways back into this game. And then game 3, they had to put him down. It wasn't like, okay, Dplus are going to sleep themselves. They had to put him down. So I liked that. What else did you like from the GenG side?
I mean, I think GenG just looked like they had their fundamentals, their team fighting, their setup, their like objective control, and their shot calling on who goes in first, how they're gonna team fight, like the way that they're gonna try to utilize Keen, the punish that they have. Their punish is so strong. And again, it's in a draft like game 3, like that's your whole game is you're punishing, and like they handled it super well. I think GenG just looked to be our strongest team right now in terms of building macro leads, setting up team fights, countering engage, re-engaging. And I think one of my biggest fears for GenG throughout LCK Cup was Canyon's somewhat inconsistent performances and Chovy somewhat inconsistent performances. And then so far here in LCK, it's like they're just not missing a beat. They've only dropped 2 games so far, one against T1, who was really on form that day, and then against against Dplus, when Dplus had like the really cool draft and they snowballed the game. My takeaway for Dplus is that, like, yeah, they need more fundamentals, but I think they're a solid they will be a solid fixture in the Legend group. I don't think that this team is not going to get Legend group. I think this team will probably then continue to improve and build those fundamentals through the latter half of the season. We're still a long way away from that, but when Dplus is not just cooking against bottom teams and kind of like Showmakers messing around and building Majais every week until he's like, oh no, it's the tough team this time, when it's actually the tough team every time, every day, then I think maybe Dplus will evolve and change, and like maybe that's going to be the transformative time. But we're still a ways away from it. But I think right now we can at least set the Dplus bar at probably like 4th place. You know, I don't feel like that's a stretch at this point in time.
No, definitely not. It just goes from being LCK Cup front runners, remember that, to now just being like, all right, we set the bar back to where we normally have you, and like top 4, maybe we'll make some noise in playoffs, and we'll see. Just a bummer. It's like the way that we view this Dplus loss isn't the way that we viewed the T1 loss. You know, like the T1 loss, we're like, damn, that was great. This one was like, even though it was another great series, it was like, oh, the expectation was to finally get over the hump. And now that because they didn't do that, they're like top 4. But we're like T1, you know, once they figure out the roster, maybe they're like champs.
Really, because for me, it's like the opposite. Like for me, I'm like, T1 looked way better than Hanwha and got destroyed by them, and Hanwha, like, to me, they looked way better than Hanwha, right? If you compare the matchups that happened before. So that was my perspective. I was like, oh man, T1, you really dropped the ball here. Like, this was a chance to actually prove that you're better than Hanwha. And like, I had some like connection to this because I predicted T1. I was one of the only
I was gonna say maybe it's because you were a T1 predator, dude.
Well, like, I don't think anyone expected Dplus to. I don't think there were any Dplus preds, and when they won game 1 and like snowballed the game, and it wasn't really about like they outclassed, they just got a lead early and didn't fuck it up. I don't think anyone believed they were going to win the series at that point. I think some people believed in game 2. I think some people believed in game 2 when they had the lead with the Cho'Gath. Like I was like, oh man, I guess it could happen, and we were like building a whole bit and stuff to do on this on the space that never happened. And so anyway, for me, I thought this result is more expected, but I wasn't disappointed with Dplus. Whereas for T1, I was a little disappointed. A little disappointed.
Yeah. Let's close it on out with predictions. Again, I know that whenever, just for you at home that don't know this, whenever I put Wolf on the spot, I always worry that he's going to start getting worried that I put him on the spot. And we did not talk about predictions this week, so me doing this speech is giving him time to look up the matches and figure out who he wants. Oh, okay. Look, all right, he's got it. All right, let's start off here. Like what we did last time, you say it and I say it here. So T1 versus Nongshim.
T1.
All right, GenG. Okay, we're done with Wednesday. Thursday. DRX Hanwha
are in the first one. Second one probably gonna be
Bro KT. Bro,
I think it's KT. Right now, I'm gonna think about it more. That's a tougher one though. That is a tougher one. Bro coming off some momentum. KT still figuring out their.
They both are. They both won.
Well, yeah, but KT's still figuring out their roster. Like Bro actually kind of figured it out a little bit in that series, whereas KT beat a bad team. Anyway, moving on.
It's one of the few times where Hype's gonna be able to be like, "What's up, Poduk, little bro?" Even though I guess Poduk is older
weirdly
and has
enough,
experience.
I guess Hype might not be able to play. It might be Bull. So
is it? Because of the substitute
he's
thing?
alone. Because he's alone.
That's all right, man. The bulldozer will come on in and be like, "What's up?"
Yeah, that
bro?
makes me 100% feel like this is a KTW.
I hate that all of you guys do that every time. All right, BFX and T1. This is T1. DNF versus Dplus. This is Dplus.
Plus.
GenG versus Bro. This is GenG.
Yeah, you have to predict GenG here, even though Bro does win these sometimes. Nongshim versus Hanwha is arguably one of the best games of the week, and I still have to vote Hanwha pretty comfortably.
Damn, both games of the week include Nongshim. Blah. Yeah. Is this where Nongshim win and throw everything into flux? No. Dplus DRX. Dplus DRX.
Dplus.
Sub out Teddy. Give me lazy feel. Dplus. KT and DNF. Oh my god, the matches of the week are KT DNF, Bro KT, Nongshim T1, and Nongshim Hanwha Live Esports. What the fuck?
It's a big week for KT. Like if they win this, like their strength of schedule is finally slowed down, and then they can kind of bounce back up into the standings. If they do not, then it is like it's 100% doomed, and I'll see you in the Rise group, KT. Like it feels like that's where we're at for them. So it's a pretty big turning point week for them. For GenG, now that their strength of schedule slowed down, should be like freebies. And then for Hanwha, it's like a little bit trickier, I would say, because Nongshim is quite strong, and DRX at their best has looked pretty good. Like if Hanwha can drop a game to DNF, they could drop a game to DRX if they don't take it seriously. And I feel like based on how they've played this entire year so far, guess what? They're not going to take it seriously. So we'll see.
Yeah. I guess if you've made it this long through the podcast, now's the time to head on over to the comments and let us know what your brilliant ideas for skits are, because we're going to need to do a lot of them for this week, because there's not going to be a lot of top tier analysis coming out.
There could be some crazy upsets. Like if T1 lose to Nongshim, there will be trucks, and we'll get to talk about it. Hold on, dGon. We don't know until the results come out. If things go according to plan, sure, it'll be a boring episode next week. But I thought this episode was gonna be boring, and it was actually pretty fun. But yeah, give us some ideas, but also maybe LZK, give us some drama, give us some upsets.
I wasn't asking for skits for our show. I was asking for skits for the space. What do you want to see us do on the LCK broadcast? Let us know. You don't like that one, Wolf? I don't know why you don't like that one.
No, I don't. I feel embarrassed because I misread what you were doing. What you were looking for.
We'll stock it up. We'll stock it up for next week. Until then, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for watching, and we'll watch another chapter of T1 vs. the World in week 3.